Colin.
Yes.
Your topic.
Yes.
Yes. For you.
So you guys know I'm a science nerd, but I like we talked about earlier. I'm not a science nerd in the sense that I'm like going to write proofs on the chalkboard. I just like reading about science and learning about science, and I'm just really into it. I'm really into physics and astronomy, especially, and all these kinds of things.
I just got this image of Colin like with his back toward the camera. He's just like, no. And
it just says 2 + 2 because it's about as much math as I can do. That was always held me back. I've talked before that I had always an interest in even like minoring in chemistry or something like that. And I was just like, I can't get very far in this. So I'm just wasting my time. But I saw Interstellar, which is a Christopher Nolan film. And it came out about, I don't know, a year and a half ago. But I finally had just rented it on Amazon and watched it this weekend. So there's going to be some Interstellar spoilers here. I think more about the science than the plot. So if you don't really care about the science and the things like in it, then maybe you don't care. But you might want to, just know that we're going to talk a little bit about Interstellar here. And what I was fascinated by, we're going to have a little winding road to my topic like you did, Nick, is
naturally.
I love the science in Interstellar and whether it was real or whether it was false. And there were some things in there that clearly didn't make any sense.
Right.
So I was, but there were some things that made perfect sense. The one thing that bothered me in the movie is that when they're landing on one of the ice.
I was going to say, can I guess which one bothered you? The fact that she would actually make out with the dude from that 70s show.
Yeah, no, that's
against all rules of physics.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Einstein didn't account for this.
So hot.
No, I was going to say when they're landing on the ice planet and they run into a cloud in the sky.
Yeah,
I'm like that cloud would have been torn down to the ground by gravity. Like, doesn't make any sense. But other than that, like that doesn't make any sense at all. Other than that, if it's heavy enough to be a solid, then it's heavy enough to not be in the fucking air anymore.
Right.
So I downloaded a book by Kip Thorne, who is he's a physicist and he's a scientific advisor on Interstellar, and he talks about meeting the actors and then he gets into the science and he goes into Gargantua and the wormhole and all these kinds of things. Gargantua being the black hole, and how all these things could happen and how all these things are somewhat realistic. So my topic is things that you know are real or think are real, that you've learned about in science or whatever that you can't believe are real, but like they're still like mind bending. And
you believe they're real. It's just impossible. You're just, God, that's crazy.
Like and more in this my example, it is real, but it's so mind bending that it's astonishing. And like, what are some of the things that you guys know to be true that are still hard for you to accept or believe? Okay. And one of the things that I was thinking about was when they land on the water planet, which is awesome.
Yeah,
an awesome scene.
Planet was just giant waves going by, destroying everything.
The planet
is heavy gravity.
Yeah, the planet is covered in just a very thin layer of water, like they can stand in it. And there's a perpetual tidal wave going around the planet because as the planet revolves, or it's rotating, but then it's revolving around Gargantua. Gargantua is consistently pulling it, just like our moon does with our our tides. But the wave happens to be like 2 miles high, and it just never stops. And but the bigger thing that was crazy to me is that it's so close to the black hole that it dilates time. So they're on the planet's surface for an hour, and they get back to the space station, and the guy there is 26 years older and has been waiting for them for 26 years when they were only on the planet's surface for an hour.
Which, by the way, was one of those weird scenes where he's like, they just come in, and they're like, hey, guy. And he's like, it's been 26 years since you left. I almost killed myself. Almost. And they just like, all right, cool.
Well, because he could have went into like cryo sleep or whatever, but he chose not to.
Yeah.
And then he did all that science that ended up not being important anyway because they were lied to. So he just wasted all of this time. But that was one of the things where I was like, holy, like, because I've read a lot about time travel and time dilation and stuff, and it's really interesting. Obviously, the quicker you go, the more time slows down. And they were talking about experiments. Kip Thorne talks about in his book experiments that were done at Harvard, where they would shoot lasers from like the top of a building to the bottom of a building and see how and then examine them with atomic clocks, and found out that even being like on the top of a 10-story building means time is going slower. By like milliseconds.
Being on top of a 10-story building, why is that?
Because you're further away from the source of the gravity.
I see, okay.
So, being in an airplane, if you were like always in an airplane, for instance, you're aging slower.
Yep.
Because you're constantly a mile high.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's so Kip Thorne goes into a lot of these things, but it was that specific thing that happened with the time dilation where I was like, holy shit. You're with them like almost in real time on the planet, and in real time, 26 years had passed for that other person. And I was like, fuck. You know, like that's totally real. That's real science. And Einstein talked all about this, you know, in the 1920s.
Let's take a step back because that was going to be my answer, which is like I don't understand that concept of like time
Theory of
being
relativity.
relative, right? Why does that work that way? And specifically, they talk about that when you're talking about faster than light travel as well, right? Yeah. The closer you get to light, the time differential between the ship traveling and people back on Earth is going to be completely ridiculous, right? They said like I think. I forget what it was. I'm not even going to try to guess the stats, but 70 years could easily be like what 1 year or something. If you're what is it? What let's not get into that.
And well, no, it depends. Like if you can't travel faster than light, so if you're traveling
close to the speed of light,
if you're traveling almost to the speed of light, time is almost not passing.
Right. So literally, if you were traveling at the speed of light, time would stand.
Time stands still, technically, I think, right?
So 1 year on Earth would be 1 second for you, basically.
Yeah, and that's what they were always saying. That's why cryosleep was such an interesting solution and something to go into Interstellar is the entire idea that if we were going to do interstellar travel, even not through a wormhole, but just leave the solar system and then go to another star, like Vega or something, one of these close by stars, we'd have to be gone. We'd be gone for tens of thousands of years.
Yeah.
But millions of years might pass on Earth by the time we get back.
Yeah.
Because of the speeds in which we're traveling. So that was the thing where I was like, it's
but
like
why?
I've always known that to be true, and I'm like, what the fuck?
So let's take a step back. Explain that to me too, because I understand the concept of like if you were to tell me Kevin is, you know, what are you, 5'6", 5'7"?
5'6".
Kevin's 5'6". I'm like, okay, cool, I can memorize that fact. I don't know what caused him to be 5'6", though. What causes that? How does that? I mean, perhaps I'm asking you guys to explain the theory of relativity.
Yeah.
Which might be a longer discussion than we need because I'm sure they teach entire classes about the subject. But what is the science behind relativity?
Well, I'm probably gonna butcher this entirely.
You're gonna get it better than me though. If you try.
So basically, large gravitational objects that create large gravitational pulls screws up the space-time fabric.
Okay.
And what it does is like because of the large gravitational pull, I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. How do they describe it in the movie? They fold over a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And explain that if this happens, then.
Well, here's the best example I can think of, and this is how it was explained to me when I was a kid.
Right.
You take and Kip Thorne actually explained this in a similar way. You take a piece of rubber, right, and you expand it into a room, and then you place a ball in the middle of it, right? The ball is going to sag the rubber in the middle. And so the fabric of space-time is a straight line, right? And when time is traveling and then goes into one of these wells, these gravity wells that like Earth or the sun or whatever creates, time dips. And so when you go into a black hole, which like you can't even see through and nothing can escape, including information, light, or time,
right?
You can't even see into them because nothing escapes. Once
so
you cross the event horizon,
stops everything.
Exactly. Once you cross the event horizon, it's it. That's why you can't see into a black hole. Because there are things there possibly, but you can't. Nothing escapes. Nothing.
Right.
So and it's because the black hole
couldn't get out of the black hole.
Well, it's yes. Thank you, Nick. But it's because the rubber like is being bent just a little bit by the planet, but by the black hole, it's like a hole. Like everything just goes into it and it's gone.
So, but that's
a decent way to explain how gravity affects time, right?
But time is not a physical thing, like a particle of light.
No, but it's a dimension.
Yes.
Good Lord, I am so lost right now.
Did you see what I'm saying?
Holy shit.
Did you see this movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's where it's hard for
It
me
was a plot point to me. It's like,
I
oh,
haven't seen the movie.
He's old because of time.
No, but that's like everything to the movie. Like that's like the most important scientific theory in that entire movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they explained that they could have gone to more. They had like 12 planets they could have gone to, but it was literally time and the relation of those planets to the black hole that meant that they couldn't go to all of them because they understood. Like they explained that they even are traveling away from the black hole as far as possible to minimize time dilation.
Right.
Because they could have made it easier and done it faster, but they knew that once they were on the surface of the planet, time was passing 7 times quicker or something like that. So.
That's crazy to me, but that's where I have.
So again,
this is where my brain breaks down, right? Is that you say like why did he physically age more than the people that were on the planet below him? Like, what is there a slowdown in their cell decomposition?
Oh no!
Well, no, he's living the 26 years, and the time isn't moving as quickly for them down there.
But that's where my brain does like.
Because the black hole is warping time.
Yeah, theory is relative to the planet that you're on. So what do we define a day as?
Well, I get that
hours.
part, but like it's just so fucking nuts for me that
That's
like,
exactly the point I'm making.
That's so like, it doesn't like I get why it should work. I get that it works. I just don't understand physically how like I can be over here and you can be over here, and your cells will have aged 26 years and mine will have aged 1 hour. Does that make sense? Like, I understand the physics behind it, I understand the science behind it. There's still that connect where I'm like, and maybe perhaps science really hasn't figured out exactly what causes it either. It's just that like, I get like right here, and then it just kind of goes over this.
Well, that's the point I'm making,
like,
is that I'm sure there are people that know science way better than I am that are like cringing because of the way I explained it. But that's basically how like I understand it or whatever.
Right.
And it's not so much that like that's what I'm saying. I don't understand the mathematical proof. I understand that it's true.
Right.
Because there are people way smarter than me that tell me it's true.
But
I'm with you. I'm like, how the fuck is that possible?
How is that possible?
Well, it's weird because when you just explained it, your answer was gravity. Why is time different? Because gravity. And I just go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
Good
the
enough.
answer. That's
Good
what I'm
enough
looking
answer
for.
for me.
Because
What the fuck does that mean?
gravitational pull. That's the only way that I
It's
think
like,
about it.
I'm
I
just
couldn't
gonna
even
answer
explain
any
it well.
question for the rest of my life with, because the gravitational pull.
Because the argument in Interstellar, I think, is that one of the questions that people ask about the Big Bang is like, where did the Big Bang go? We know the Big Bang happened because of the redshift and all this kind of stuff, but like, and everything's
Because
moving
we
away
can
from
see
each
the
other.
universe expand.
Right, exactly. But
Correct.
like, why? And we can see the remnants of it too.
Right.
But where is it
Greg, take it
going? And that was one of the questions that they answer. Is that I think they call it hyperspace, which is another dimension where like the universe is expanding into a different dimension, and it's actually curving. So that when you curve the piece of paper in the wormhole, you're curving it towards each other so you can get to a place far away quickly. But you're going through like another space, which is like this other hyperspace, like fifth dimension
I
kind
didn't see
of
this
thing.
movie.
So
Oh no, the movie is by the way, I thought it was brilliant. There's a lot of science in it that you're like, it's one of those films, and I think you had the reaction to this too, where you were like, there are a couple moments where I'm like, hey, can you spend maybe another 20 minutes explaining that to me? But they just physically can't. 'Cause
I'm
there's
just happy they didn't.
So much
They didn't
in the
need to.
movie, right?
the movie was already an hour longer than it needed to be because of them having exposition.
They have exposition, right? Not the least of which was by Anne Hathaway, where you were like, man, I'll watch her talk about anything. Doesn't matter. But yeah, there's that. But then there's also the concept of gravity as well. That's another, like, I understand gravity. I get that that's caused by gravity. I don't know why. I don't know why bigger masses have more gravity, and I'm sure that can be easily explained.
Because it's bending space. It's bending the fabric of space more. That's the point.
Because
is that, like,
it's
a
taking
gas
up
giant,
more space.
Not necessarily,
No, more dense.
because a black hole, like a neutron star, is like some of the densest stuff in the universe, and it's nothing. It's really tiny.
This is fucking bullshit. So why time and space? Because gravity. Why gravity? Because time and space.
Well, black
I will
holes-
stand
I'm not
for this.
I'm not explaining
Science
it
is
very well.
lies.
Yeah.
It's lies.
Well, I mean, black holes are the most densest objects because it sucks everything in and just makes a really dense ball.
Black holes. I mean, that can
Well,
that
yeah,
be my
'cause-
answer? What
Yeah,
the fuck?
Black holes can be your answer.
I think the answer for everybody is is the same thing Colin brought up because no one can explain it, and everybody's like, I don't understand. Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, that makes no. I mean, there's such simpler things that I don't understand. Like just magnets. They blow my mind. Like how the fuck that shit works.
That's a little bit easier to explain. I'm not going to try, but it's a little easier to explain. That
Yeah,
has
that
to
was
do
my
with
favorite
positive
thing
and
with that.
negatively
It was
charged
Insane Clown
particles.
Posse, right? Who put out that song? And everybody's
Magnets,
like,
how do they work?
And everybody's like, what a bunch of idiots. He's like, how do magnets work? And everybody's like, don't worry about it.
Same reason why everyone's always like this. Why is the sky blue? And I'm like,
Yeah, exactly. I don't
I'm
know
like
the fucking
refraction of the
Of-
atmosphere. There's that, but then there's also the concept of when I watched Cosmos, they talk about the
new one.
everything. Yeah, the one with Neil deGrasse Tyson, not
Carl Sagan.
Carl Sagan's. That was a little too hard for me to get into. It's a little dated, brilliant but dated, because he's like this. It's
Carl
like
Sagan's my dude.
What made the universe? And he's just him, like in a grassy knoll with no pants on. It's just like, I'm Carl Sagan. I'll tell you why I'm not wearing pants.
Gravity.
After this break, black holes. No. They talk about the formation of what's happening in a star, right? And how there's so much nuclear fission happening that like particles, atoms at a subatomic level are being crammed together to make new elements, right? And that's how we find all the elements because
Up to iron,
right? And then once iron happens, it stops.
Then
it
it explodes,
right?
and then you get
almost
everything else.
instantaneous, right? Which you get everything else. That blows me away. I don't understand. It breaks my brain that you can have something that specifically you guys are talking about the Neutron Star, right? Which was the Neutron Star? Or which one was the most densest, the smallest, but it's still the
A neutron
heaviest?
star is an exploded star that didn't go nova, right? So I think that it's
Maybe let's talk about we'll take the black hole.
yeah, the black hole would be a black hole is a supermassive star.
Science, it breaks my brain that the concept of density. That's another one that kills me. Is that I'm so used to seeing objects relative to their weight, right? So I know that Kevin probably weighs a specific amount. I know I can probably guess his weight. I know I can guess your weight. But then the concept of having a marble that might weigh a metric ton because of how dense it is. But my brain can't process that, right? Because I know a ton to me is like a car, or a pound is supposed to look like this weight. That's about a pound. But like being able to have something that's the size of a pinprick, that's a pound, blows me away. But that's possible, right?
Yeah, no, I mean the Big Bang, 13.5 billion years ago, whatever it was, everything in the universe,
right? That's nuts.
Coming
from one point.
In 1 point.
Yeah,
that's why it exploded.
That's crazy.
But
that's
presumably, I don't know. It was just Interstellar was full of really fascinating stuff to me that. Some of it I know, some of it I think I know and I can't explain well, which is probably that entire thing with gravity. But even like the wormhole stuff, which creates all sorts of plot points that we're not going to get into because I don't want to spoil it that much.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the most unbelievable part of the movie for you though?
I mean, that's obvious.
No, I don't mean from a I don't understand how any of this shit's working. I mean like what broke. What was the one where you're like this? I don't know if that's necessarily how that would work.
That's an obvious
those two go
answer.
hand in hand.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the library?
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
The one thing that's
that really bothered me.
This is bullshit. Like, okay, the science.
Spoiling.
Do I understand the
said
science?
spoiler, so we can talk about
I do not understand the science. Do I understand the
He
plot?
actually started off with like, we're going to spoil some of the science, and now you want to go into the story.
Fair enough.
But it's like, from a plot, that movie, I was right there with them. It's just like, time, like they straight up say, time's going to be different for this guy than this guy because science. And I'm like, okay, cool, I believe you. That's the plot. Like, whether or not the science is accurate, I don't care. It's a fucking movie. But then that shit was just like, no, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kip Thorne argues that, and maybe because he's the guy who helped make it in terms of the science, says that it's pretty much all solid. And then you read things from...
It's because they paid him $1 million.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm going to back this up right now.
Close enough.
And then you see some people that talk about it and are like, there's a lot of things wrong with it. And one of the big things that people find wrong with it is actually what's happening on Earth, which I think is one of the funniest things is that there's all this extraordinary interstellar travel going on in the movie, and you're going through a wormhole next to Saturn that someone fucking put there.
Right.
Then you're in another galaxy, and there's 12 planets and a fucking black hole called Gargantua, and all these kinds of things. And they're like, no, that's not the problem. The problem is that the Earth wouldn't end this quickly. That was like what a lot of going.
That was the bad science.
Like some of the bad science apparently was that like oxygen wouldn't deplete for millions of years, even if like all these crops failed. That blights don't jump from crop to crop like that either. Like that doesn't happen. And it wouldn't happen at a rapid pace like that, they were saying. So I was reading a lot of weird science where they're like, the science up there seems pretty sound. The science, it's all hypothetical. The science down here
We got some problems.
is a little more questionable. And I was like, that's interesting.
So you're telling me that Matthew McConaughey can't hack into a drone that's flying in the air? He can't do that.
I like that whole thing.
With the vacuum cleaner thing?
Yeah, this is like with his weird vacuum.
The bigger question to me, like, and it's, I want to read more about Nolan's like idea for this universe. Is like, this is a spoiler. I mean, people. Hopefully, you're not watching at this point if you really want to see Interstellar.
No.
But
They know. Don't touch me.
There's a scene where the Yankees are playing,
Yeah.
but it's like some bush league bullshit Yankee team in front of like 200 people or something like that.
Right.
And my bigger question about Interstellar is like, what the fuck happened to the planet? Like, where is everyone? How many people are left? And like, was there a war and famine and all these kinds of things? There's a lot of unanswered questions about how they got to that point because it seems like more sudden than it really was. I think in the lore. Of the
Right.
movie.
We're not dealing with post-apocalyptic, right? This is sort of like
It's pre-apocalyptic.
It's pre-apocalyptic, but it's not. It's a society that's declining. But it has not declined 100%, right? And so they say if you haven't seen Interstellar and you're like, what the hell are you guys talking about? Maybe pause this, watch the movie, and come back because you'll find this conversation fascinating, if not intriguing. But it's similar to like Road Warrior, right? Where it's like society's breaking down. They say that this is the last generation. Like Michael Caine has that line where he's like, if you don't do something about this right now, like your daughter's generation will be the last generation on Earth. Like that's it, and you're like, "Whoa, that's pretty severe." It seems like at that point, though, it's already too late. Like if it's literally we're at the last, like the second to last generation, we're kind of screwed, right? But that I guess is reason enough for someone to want to jet themselves into a wormhole.
Colin doesn't even do a reason. He'd jet into a wormhole.
Would you go into a wormhole if there was a ship that allowed it? Would you do it, knowing that you'd probably be torn to pieces and compressed to the size of nothing?
It would be an incredible. I mean, them going through the wormhole was an awesome experience, like to watch.
That was cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm so fascinated. I've always been so fascinated by astronomy and space travel and all those kinds of things that I don't know, man. Like, there's a lot of things I would do.
Always go in the wormhole.
I forget
Just good advice.
where do you sit on being the guy that would go to Mars?
Oh, the one-way trip?
Yeah.
I don't think I would. I think if I was an old man, I would probably do it.
Like 60,
Maybe a little older, yeah.
70?
Yeah,
You
somewhere
probably
around
wouldn't
there.
pass the physical requirements.
Yeah,
at 70,
exactly. I mean, that's the problem. But I mean, like, to be the first person to step on Mars is pretty impressive.
I would like this too. I'd be like, okay, we're on Mars. We just landed, and then I would throw something, be like, "What's that?" And then I would, because I'd be goddamn if we went all that way, and I wasn't the first motherfucker to step foot on that red planet.
But then you accidentally
Trip and fall.
No,
and
you
idiot.
accidentally
throws
throw
it
it
through a window, yeah.
and then the spacecraft decompresses and you all die.
We went all this way, Scarpino.
It's like
Nine
that's
months!
like a Twilight Zone episode.
That'd be hilarious.
I don't know. So that was like that. I just wanted to talk about that, and I guess we all kind of agree that maybe those are some of the biggest questions we have, or some of the I don't know, because that movie was mind blowing. You know, I really had so much that I wanted to read a lot about it afterwards. Because I was like, this is, and some of the stuff I know about already. I know about black holes. I know about time dilation and stuff like that, at least in a rudimentary way. But I want to read more about it because it's so physics is so fucked up that I can't believe anyone studies it and like actually comprehends it and then figures these things out with mathematical proofs. You know, because Einstein predicted a black hole long before we were ever able to really observe one, and we're not really still sure if we've really ever observed one. We think one's at the supermassive gargantuan like black holes at the center of the galaxy, for instance, but you can't see them. You can see their effect on other things.
Right. That's how they judge it, right? Because they see light literally bending or disappearing, right?
It's the same thing of like how you know a supernova happened in a certain place millions or billions of years ago is because you can just see the remnants of it.
Yeah, you can track the sort of outward particles.
So it's just like, I don't know, I'm fascinated by that how
Right, isn't that
smart
how they do
people
it?
are, man. It goes back to what I was saying, James, in the beginning, where it's just like, there's just these left brain people, man, are revolutionizing everything. You know, everything. And it's awesome. So Interstellar was cool. People should go see it. I'm sure most of you have already, since you're way cooler than I am.
Yeah, it's you know what, the one thing I'm disappointed with in your situation, Colin, is that you didn't see it in IMAX.
Oh, fuck off with this.
That going
On
back
demand,
to
it's the future.
No, man, Interstellar really was an experience.
it actually
movie.
was. It was filmed. All the parts of the film specifically were filmed in IMAX for a dramatic purpose. Like, and this is not really spoiling because everyone knows that he leaves his daughter behind. You can see it in the trailer. There's a fucking amazing scene, and I watched this with my wife, who obviously has a good close relationship with her father. And there's a great scene where he's like, I think her name's Merv or Marv. Murph. He's like, Murph, we got to solve this right now because I got to go. And she refuses to talk to him. Right, she's lying in bed, and he's like, I got to go. Like, you have to be okay with me leaving right now. And she doesn't say anything. And then he gets in his truck, and there's this amazing shot where the camera's on this fender driving away, and you see her run out of the house to say goodbye, but she misses her chance. And it's like, the second it goes to that fender shot, it takes up the entire 70-foot screen, and that fucking music, that like crazy organic synth, like it's. I think it's an actual organ. I don't think it was synth at all. I think it was a real organ, like wow, and you're just blasted with this huge image of this little girl running out of her house after her father, and that's all you get. And you're like, you can't get that. I don't care how good your TV is, you cannot get that on a 60-inch TV.
You fucked up, Nolan, putting it in there because everybody watches it on their
It was
TV.
beautiful, so beautiful, and the
Your
shots.
masterpiece looks like a fucking pile
gonna
of
come-
garbage.
The
He's gonna come
shots where
string
the ship is leaving the atmosphere and it's
Yeah.
blowing out the like each rocket's like coming off of it as it kind of jettisons out of the stratosphere. It's so beautiful. So
I'll make you
beautiful.
even angrier. I'm probably gonna watch it tomorrow on my iPad on the plane. So fuck you, movie makers. Tim, what's your topic?
I'm just glad you're watching movies, Greg.
I
All
probably
right,
won't. I'll
again,
probably
this is going to be the third walk to a topic that we've had today. So here's
Wait,
my
I hate to do
story.
this, but I kind of go to